Police emergency, this is Simone.
Yeah, hi, my son is missing. He's 3.5.
On September 12, 2014, a little boy vanished without a trace.
Okay, what's his name?
William.
What's William's surname?
Tyrrell.
How long has he been missing?
We've been looking for him now for about 15 or 20 minutes, but
Okay.
I thought it could be 5, it could be longer, because he was just playing around here. We heard him, and then we heard nothing.
The disappearance of William Tyrrell has become one of Australia's biggest mysteries.
This is still being treated as a search and rescue operation. However, they have not been able to rule out the possibility that William Tyrrell was abducted.
Did you take William Tyrrell?
No.
Do you know who took William Tyrrell?
No.
Police publicly focused on one man.
We believe that you may have grabbed William from that front address, from the front yard of that address. You may have left the area without anyone knowing.
The man accused of abducting William Tyrrell is speaking out for the first time to tell his side of the story.
And he turned around and said, "We know you did it. We're going to get you. I'm going to come and arrest you." And I said, "I haven't done anything. You know, what are you talking about?"
I would like to hear the police apologise to him what they put him through, because they just told him that they're going to ruin him, and they did.
They never considered for one moment the possibility of his innocence, and that demonstrated that they didn't bring a fair, objective mind, an open mind, necessary for good investigations to this investigation.
5 years after the disappearance of William Tyrrell, the man who became the chief suspect has had his life ruined, and police are no closer to solving the case. Tonight on Four Corners, how the wrong man became the investigation's key person of interest. In the New South Wales coastal town of Laurieton, September 12, 2014 began like any other day. White goods repairman Bill Spedding had just arrived at work.
I was in the office for a fair while, doing computer work and orders and processing paperwork and generally office-type functions. And then at about 25 to 10 or something like that, I started walking up the street to meet Margaret at the coffee shop.
We ordered some eats and a coffee. Just sat there till about 20 past 10, something like that. We walked across to the school.
The school was Laurieton Public, where the Spedding's grandson was getting an award.
So we walked across the school, down the steps, around to the school assembly hall, and selected a seat and sat and waited for the children to walk in and the assembly to begin.
We left straight after it because Bill had a service call too that he put off a little bit too, so he could be at the assembly. So he had to go off to that. And then I went home, done a bit of shopping, went home.
A doting grandfather, Bill Spedding was well known in the local area.
Bill's a very genuine, loyal, honest gentleman. And he's always been like that, or ever since I've known him for 28 years.
Bill, you couldn't pick a better bloke. Like, he's down to earth and, you know, you give the shirt off your back kind of thing, because that's the way the Bill is. He's just a genuine person.
After the school assembly, Bill Spedding headed off to his first job of the day.
I walked back to the office And I did a little bit of work there and then went out to a place called Dumbogan, which was the opposite direction to Kendall from Laurelton, and attended a service call up there.
"15 minutes drive away in the township of Kendall, a drama was beginning to unfold. A little boy in a Spiderman suit called William had disappeared.
So he's been missing since about 10:30.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Do you know where he might have gone?
We actually live, well, Mum's property's near a state forest,
Okay.
and they're on huge blocks. We've walked up and down Benaroon Drive, and we can't find him.
Police arrived shortly after, and word spread quickly among the locals that a little boy was lost.
So there was a lot of police cars, a lot of activity going in and out of the house. I felt optimistic that we would find something or some indication, and I feel like the people that were with me did feel the same way.
By day's end, there was still no sign of William Tyrrell. "20 kilometres away at Bonny Hills, Bill and Margaret Spedding were at home with their grandchildren, preparing to head out to dinner.
Just as we were packing up and sort of getting ourselves together ready to go, the news flash came on the TV.
A search is underway for a 3-year-old boy missing on the mid-north coast.
And there's a missing child at Kendall, and Kendall, that's close. And we noticed, because it was so close, if it had been Timbuktu or Sydney, we wouldn't have really paid that much attention to it.
I said, oh, a little boy at Kendall's gone missing. And I said to Bill, I said, oh, that's a little bit close to home, because I went to school there, Kendall. And, yeah, so there was nothing until the next day. It was sort of on the TV more and everywhere, radio and everything the next day.
At this stage, we're looking at a search to locate a missing child. We're obviously open to any possibility, but at this stage, we're looking at a search to locate the missing child.
This picture of 3-year-old William Tyrrell was taken just an hour before he disappeared. Dressed for adventure, he was playing with his sister in the yard of his grandmother's home in Kendall on Friday morning when she lost sight of him.
I think it was the Saturday night news that I said to Margaret, I said, that looks like the street I might have been in the other day.
3 days before William Tyrrell vanished, Bill Spedding had been called to the house to fix a washing machine. He was waiting for parts to be delivered before finishing the job.
And that was it. That was the only connection that I made.
Over the weekend, friends of William Tyrrell's distraught family called on the public for help. The family themselves couldn't go public because William was a foster child, and legally they couldn't be identified.
The family want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of the police, the SES, every volunteer and every community member that has come together over the last few days to help with the search and to help find William, because they're just desperate to have him back.
The search continued into the next week when Bill Spedding received a call from police.
I'd learned the police were going to speak to anybody that had been at the house within that week that he disappeared. And so it wasn't a surprise to me. They got a phone call to drop by the Port Macquarie police station and have a chat.
At Port Macquarie police station, he was questioned by detectives. He didn't take a lawyer.
They did a download, permission for a download off my smartphone, which I consented to. They got the diary, photocopied my diary, and photocopied a notebook, and which I was using in conjunction with business functions. And they asked questions of where I'd been on Friday, and obviously I told them about the school assembly.
And how were you feeling about that at this point?
I was quite relaxed about it. I was quite surprised it took so long.
With no trace of William Tyrrell after more than a week, police scaled back the search.
When I heard that the search was being scaled down and then called off, it just made me really sad. I was just putting myself in that parent role of, that's my child and no one's looking for him. And it was incredibly sad. It was sad for the whole community.
The investigation seemed to have stalled. 4 months later, in January 2015, it took a dramatic turn.
So we were casually out the back veranda having our coffee and feeding the magpies and the kookaburras and whatnot, and the young fella come, "Nan, Pop, driveway's full of police cars, there's police everywhere." And I thought, oh, okay, so we get up and go to the front.
And we just got up and opened the door, and they said what they're here for, to search for some items of little William. And I just said, well, go ahead, come in. And yeah, and then it was just chaos from then on.
Police had obtained warrants to search the property where Bill and Margaret Spedding lived with their grandchildren.
There was just officers everywhere doing things and going through all the by this time they had teams in the bedrooms going through the drawers and through your personal papers and personal drawers and all this sort of thing.
What the Speddings weren't told was that someone they knew had contacted the police in the days after William Tyrrell went missing. Bill Spedding believes the tip-off related to allegations made against him 30 years earlier, that he had abused 2 children. The allegations had been investigated and dismissed at the time.
It was going back to within a couple of days of William's disappearance that they received a false report regarding me. And at that point of time, that was when the entire investigation was derailed.
Do you accept that police had a pretty good reason to regard you as a person of interest in this case?
Well, there's a big difference between a person of interest and a prime suspect. And after that phone call, I was a prime suspect.
The Speddings' property was declared a crime scene. Police raked through sections of the yard, and the septic tank was drained. They also searched beneath the house.
I had things packed up on milk cartons to pack it off the ground so they wouldn't get wet. And what they'd done is they picked up all these milk cartons and shoved it all aside and dug up underneath where the milk cartons were, possibly thinking they had something hidden underneath there. And so those little holes and things dug everywhere, and I learned later they had a cadaver dog under there.
So what, they were looking for a body?
Well, obviously, yes, they were.
During the search, police found a Spiderman toy in Bill Spedding's van. He told police the toy belonged to his grandson and had been there for years.
My van is not particularly tidy, and we've had kids and we've got children's paraphernalia in the van. And of course there's bits and pieces of toys and Batman and all this sort of thing, but there was also a Spiderman in the van.
It's a pretty extraordinary and unfortunate coincidence, though, isn't it?
Yes, how can someone predict something like that happening? But what the police then did is they talked to the young fellow who pretty much confirmed what I said, and they talked to other people that they knew had been in the van and confirmed that it had been there the whole time.
As the search continued, police took Bill Spedding to Port Macquarie Police Station.
To publicly take him from the premises in a police car and conduct that search over that period of time had the obvious effect of notifying the public at large that this man was a suspect, not only a person of interest, but a suspect. And from that point forward, Bill Spedding's life became devastated.
Homicide detective Justin Moynihan led an aggressive interrogation that lasted 6 hours.
I believe you went to that address at 48 Bennerin Drive, Kendall, on the 12th of September 2014.
I never went near there.
You were there to fix that washing machine.
No.
But perhaps you didn't make it to the house, because as we know, William Tyrrell was wandering around the front yard of his grandmother's house at 48 Bennerin Drive, Kendall, on his own. He had no supervision by any parent at that time for a few minutes. We know that.
Mm.
Okay? But
I wasn't
we
there.
believe you were there.
I wasn't there.
We believe that perhaps you may have seen William.
No.
Further to that,
never met him.
Further to that, we believe that you may have grabbed William from that front address, from the front yard of that address. You may have left the area without anyone knowing.
Well, you obviously believe it because of the search of the house and home.
Well, of course, we very much believe it.
I'm sorry, I wasn't there.
Police had learned that just before he disappeared, William Tyrrell's foster mother had called Bill Spedding and left a voicemail message about the faulty washing machine. Police accused him of deleting a record of that call.
Why is that phone call not in your incoming calls on the 12th of September 2014 at 9:03 a.m?
I don't know.
Did you delete that phone call?
No, as far as I know, you can't delete.
Did you delete that phone call from your telephone number, from your mobile telephone, to show the police that that phone call did not occur for whatever reason?
I don't know. I didn't delete anything.
So we, naturally enough, sent the material to an expert who confirmed that because he was on a telephone call at the time the message was received on the handset, it would not have been recorded on the handset. So there was an innocent explanation as to the message not being there, rather than it having been deleted. Then that was something that was erroneously put to him. It was based on a falsehood, and it ought to have been checked thoroughly. Now that...
What does it tell you about the way police were operating?
It demonstrates a preconceived notion that he was responsible for the disappearance of the child. It demonstrates that they had no other thought of open objectivity to the investigation that they were conducting in relation to him.
Oh, it was tough. It was... if a fellow was guilty, I could well see why someone would break. It was intense. And it just got really, really intense from that point onwards.
Did you take William Tyrrell?
No.
Do you know who took William Tyrrell?
No.
Do you know anything about William Tyrrell?
Nothing at all, other than what I've read in the paper and heard on the media, and then seen his photo on Facebook.
Do you know where William Tyrrell is right now?
No.
After 6 hours, Bill Spedding was released without charge. He was driven to a relative's house by police, including Detective Moynihan.
When they dropped me outside the house, one of the detectives said, "We're going to let him out." And I said, "Yeah, I suppose we have to." And he turned around and said, "We know you did it." we're going to get you. I'm going to come and arrest you. And I said, I haven't done anything. You know, what are you talking about? And that's when I realised that they were really thought that I was involved in some way.
I opened the door for him. He came in and he looked terribly he was just sort of wasn't all with it, very upset. He said, you should have heard just what they said to me. And I said, well, what'd they say? They said, well, you're it, we're going to get you. He was shaken, and I suppose being in the police station for so long, being interviewed, and then to be let off that time of the night and to be told that as he got out of the car, I think hit him a bit hard, because there was a lot of things he didn't remember whilst he was being interviewed.
Bill Spedding was convinced he had a rock-solid alibi. He told Colin Youngbury he was having coffee with Margaret at the time William Tyrrell disappeared.
I must have said, oh, how'd you pay for it? And he said, oh, I don't know, I forget. And then all of a sudden, clicko, he said, oh, hang on, I think I paid for that with my MasterCard. And I said, are you sure? He said, yeah. He said, oh, if that's the case, it should be on my statement.
We went on his computer and downloaded the banking statements and had a look at them and found the transaction on the bank statement and printed it out. So we had that record.
The bank record showed Bill Spedding's card was used to pay at the coffee shop at 9:44 a.m, about 45 minutes before William Tyrrell disappeared and before he and Margaret went to the school assembly.
So then I rang up Detective Moynihan the next day, and I had to borrow Colin's phone. And I tried to explain to Detective Moynihan what had happened, and his reply was that, I'm tired of your bullshit and lies, don't speak to me again. And that was his response.
How did you take that?
Well, I said, well, I'm not talking to you guys again. You know, you can go fly a kite. There was no attempt at obtaining my cooperation.
They had by that stage formed a view that Bill Spedding was the person that they were most interested in investigating, connected with the disappearance of William Tyrrell. That was very clear from the interview that they had with him, and regrettably was based on a whole lot of propositions that they hadn't properly considered and hadn't properly turned their mind to the possibility that they were wrong.
What do you want to say to the Tyrrell family?
This is
No further comments. You right, Doc? You right?
I just need to get through it.
In another blow, child welfare authorities took the Speddings' grandchildren away.
We had to say goodbye to them, and that was terrible. They were just so crying, and we were crying. Sorry. It was terrible. And when they found out that they were trying to accuse Pop for doing that, they were just so angry.
Okay, it's 4:52 p.m. on the 26th of February 2015. I'm Detective Inspector Gary Jubilant from the New South Wales Police Homicide. I'm speaking to Margaret Spedding in relation to what occurred on Friday the 12th of September 2014.
Almost 5 months into the investigation, a new homicide detective took over. Gary Jubilant had a reputation for cracking tough cases.
So what I want you to explain to me is how you're so convinced that Bill was with you on that day.
Well, he was, because we had just had a coffee across the road.
Yeah. Well, he was is not an answer. That's what I'm saying is what's what are the trigger points? What are the things that make you confident that Bill was here on that day?
Because we both arranged to meet for coffee before the assembly. He dropped the two boys off at school and he was to meet me up there.
Right.
I mean, I know they've got to do their job and I know that they've got to look for that little boy. But, you know, I just didn't understand why they focused on Bill so much.
When I took over the investigation, Bill Spedding was, the public focus was on Bill Spedding and he was linked to the William Tyrrell investigation. It might sound somewhat ironic and I don't expect Bill to understand this, or Mr Spedding, I should say, to understand this, but the best thing that I could do for Mr Spedding is to ensure that a thorough investigation was done.
And you're certain this is the assembly we're talking about on Friday the 12th of September?
Yeah, as soon as the company.
What's the doubt?
We very rarely miss an assembly, so you know, there's been nearly all of them, so they all get merged and confused in your mind.
Bill Spedding had told police about his alibi at the assembly just after William disappeared, but it took them months to follow up.
So there was months that went by before the broader other parents, other teachers, children were spoken to about the attendance of people at the school assembly. And by that stage, there'd been, you know, countless number of assemblies, or there'd been at least dozens, and people couldn't remember one assembly from another.
Do you agree that it would have been far more beneficial for all concerned for police to act on that far earlier?
Yes, I can say that it would have been. I want to preface that with the fact I'm not sure what information the police that were running the investigation at the time had available to them or what the circumstances were. So I'm not passing judgment, and I want to be very clear. I'm not being critical. I'm talking in a general sense that it would be beneficial to clarify the alibi evidence as soon as possible.
In early March 2015, police launched a major search of bushland not far from Bill Spedding's home.
The search was as a result of information that we received of recent times and from inquiries that we've made on the strike force.
Police had received a tip-off from a neighbour, Dean Pollard, who'd said he'd seen Spedding's white van on a bush track the day after William Tyrrell disappeared.
It led police to do a very extensive search involving dozens and dozens of police officers and specialist police officers, including cadaver dogs and divers and expert searchers, in an area of bushland with no result.
Bill Spedding had an alibi for the day his van was supposedly spotted.
Okay, we'll move on to our awards for our under-13s.
He'd been at a football function at a local club where he was filmed, but police failed to check. It was left to his lawyers to track down the evidence.
Police had his diary. Police had his diary from September of 2014, within days of William Tyrrell's disappearance. They had his diary, and it said in that diary, 2 p.m, he was at an AFL presentation. They never sought to explore that.
Why didn't police check that out?
Because if we made any inquiries, they would have to be overt in nature, and those inquiries potentially could get back to Mr Spedding. We're searching an area, and I made no bones about it. The area we're searching, we were looking for William's remains. If, again, hypothetically, if Mr Spedding had become aware that we were looking for his movements on that day or making inquiries around that particular piece of bushland, there's a possibility that he could have attended that location and removed evidence we may have been looking for.
While police were focused on Bill Spedding, a possible sighting of William Tyrrell was reported. Ron Chapman lived around the corner from where William Tyrrell was staying. In March 2015, he told police that on the morning William went missing, he'd seen a car speed past his house, and in the back was a small boy wearing a Spiderman costume.
And that's when I saw William in the back seat of a four-wheel drive with his two hands up on the window in his Spiderman suit, unrestrained.
He also said he saw the driver.
She was in her late 20s to probably late 30s, of very fair appearance. She had blonde hair. It was all combed up in a bun on the top of her head.
Incredibly, it took police 2 years after they first spoke to Ron Chapman to take a formal witness statement and conduct this walkthrough. The detective who interviewed Ron Chapman said she believed him. The car and driver have never been identified.
Do you at least acknowledge that it is extraordinary that police didn't take it more seriously?
No.
And why not?
As I said, I don't think it's appropriate for me to discuss that.
In April 2015, Bill Spedding was blindsided.
There was an indication that something was up. There was media and a lot of media vehicles and a lot of media activity outside the house. And I said to Margaret, I said, there's something going on. These guys have been here since daylight and they've got the cameras pointing at us.
And we opened the blinds and it was just cars, media, all up and down the road, everywhere.
2 police cars arrived in the driveway and the detectives got out and they came up to the front door and formally informed me that I was under arrest for the historical allegations.
Police arrested Spedding over the alleged sexual abuse of 2 young girls dating back to 1987. The allegations had been investigated at the time and dismissed by authorities.
Well, that was a knockout blow. That was terrible, because I knew that to defend such an allegation was difficult, very difficult to defend.
So they took him away and Jubilant said, do you want me to take you in to see him? And I said, no, I'll go myself. And then the media was just getting closer and closer and I just told them to get off my lawn and I told Jubilant to go with them.
You can get off the property right now.
I was taken to Port Macquarie Police Station, formally charged, fingerprinted, photographed and stripped and searched and all the unpleasant things they do. And they wanted to have a recorded interview regarding the allegations. So they set up all the camera and I said, I'm not doing an interview. The interview's finished now. So they shut down the machine.
Bill Spedding says the conversation continued once the camera was off.
Garen Drill has said to me that, Mr. Nice Washing Machine Man, we're going to ruin you. And at another point of time, and he did the hand, said, whenever they talk about William Tyrrell, your name's going to come up as well. And when they're talking about you, William Tyrrell's name's going to come up.
What did you think about that? How did you take those statements?
You arsehole.
That's the first time I've heard those claims. I don't recall the exact conversation. Obviously, I did speak to him at the time of his arrest. That was the arrest for, we're talking the arrest for the historical sexual assaults.
Do you deny saying that to him?
I deny saying those words to him. I don't deny speaking to him.
Well, it was an opportunity for police to extract a maximum amount of pressure upon him, a maximum amount of pressure upon his family, and of course it was a signal to the public at large that they had focused on someone who was good for something, that they might not be able to get him for William Tyrrell, but they would get him for something else.
It was appropriate that he was charged and it wasn't used as a strategy. I think I could sit here in the same position and be strongly criticised why I didn't take action against someone that I've been told there's sufficient evidence to have charged or put before the court for historical sexual assault of children.
Bill Spedding was denied bail and taken to Cessnock Jail. He says he was met by guards in body armour.
I was stripped naked, and the guy behind me put his nightstick up on neck like this, and he was here in my ear. He said, "Don't you turn round, don't you eyeball me, you listen to what I've got to say." He said, "We want you to talk. You know what we want to say, we want you to talk." And I'd shove this up your, except that I'd have to clean it afterwards. You just remember, we want you to talk.
After 8 weeks in prison, Bill Spedding was released on bail. The media were waiting.
How was jail, Bill?
They come around into the backyard and I basically told them they're on private property, they're not welcome, get off. You're on private property. Now, if you don't off, I'll call the police immediately. Now go. Off.
The media done some nasty things. You know, that he was innocent, but made out he was in the wrong. And that was hard. That was very hard to go through.
You could see it was wearing him down because he wasn't the happy-go-lucky Bill that I first met. Pardon me, he was starting to get a bit withdrawn on himself. And Margie was doing the same, like she was getting flustered and, you know, a few times she says, "Let's pack up and just go. Let's go. I want out."
There was no let-up for the Speddings.
When we moved into this other place that the landlord gave us, we had an altercation with the policeman's wife who lived in that street. Come down and told us we shouldn't be there. And I went round, she said, I went round to all the neighbours and told them that Bill Spedding's moving in here.
I really would appreciate if you were never out the front if the children are around.
Oh, I've got a couple on occasionally.
You will not do it if you see children. I just would like to know that you would never have a mobile out here in case you're grooming my children, if you're viewing any of my children or their friends.
Okay, that's not a problem.
And I don't want the blinds open while they're playing out the front because I just don't want you around when there's so many children here.
So you really felt like you were being hounded?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, that was terrible.
When the historical child abuse charges came to court, the prosecution case collapsed and the judge threw the whole thing out.
Oh, excuse us, please.
Ultimately, the judge was completely unsatisfied with the reliability of the evidence that had been presented by the Crown case, found that the judge, could not be satisfied even that there was a case to answer by Mr Spedding, and rejected the prosecution case, acquitting him, and ordered costs to be paid in his favour by the prosecutors.
It was, you're free to go, Mr Spedding, and I was free to go. But the oppression, the apparent oppression, being out in public, did not evaporate.
We're very mindful it's over 3.5 years since William disappeared and we haven't solved this matter. We're going to continue on until we do solve this matter.
Almost 4 years after William Tyrrell disappeared, police were still no closer to solving the case.
Are you in a position to say how many persons of interest you have in this case?
No, I know last time that we spoke to the media, and I think it was on the 3-year anniversary, that it was flagged that there was hundreds of persons of interest. And I also clarified that the bar is set very low to be on that persons of interest.
Earlier this year, Gary Jubelin was sensationally removed from the case, accused of secretly recording another person of interest without a warrant. Jubelin has now quit the police. He's due to stand trial on criminal charges next year.
I've pleaded not guilty to all 4 charges. Those charges relate specifically to me carrying out my duties investigating the disappearance of William Tyrrell. I had a lawful right and an operational need to record those conversations. I have made no attempt whatsoever to conceal the fact that I recorded those conversations, and police were aware of that.
Look, with the greatest respect, I can't discuss those issues, or I shouldn't say can't, I just choose not to discuss those issues at this particular point in time.
And why is that?
I just don't think it's the appropriate forum. In regards to all that's happened to me this year, I've made my comments on the steps of the court, and I think that's where I should leave it.
Can I say I was delighted? Yeah, I was delighted in the fact that something had happened to him, and that was probably a thought of revenge on my behalf.
Why is the 101 still there?
New South Wales Police told Four Corners Detective Moynihan has also been moved from the homicide squad and is on extended leave pending the outcome of an internal investigation into unrelated matters. The William Tyrrell case is now being examined by the coroner.
I expect that the evidence in the brief, together with the further evidence to be elicited this week, may show that William didn't fall down a drain or get lost chasing a wallaby or get caught in a bush. I expect the evidence may show it is likely that he was taken. That is, that William's disappearance was the direct result of human intervention. If it is the case that William was abducted, if the evidence does establish that, that's a chilling conclusion.
For Bill Spedding, evidence at the inquest finally delivered his vindication. His key alibi for the morning William Tyrrell disappeared, attending the school assembly, was corroborated by a parent, Gordon Weigold.
Do you remember being at an assembly where one of the boys, let's call him Ben, got an award?
Yes, I remember that clearly.
Seeing him get the award?
Yes, I saw him get the award.
Do you have a specific recollection of seeing Bill Spedding at the assembly where Ben got the award?
Most certainly.
Then, the statement by Bill Spedding's former neighbour Dean Pollard about seeing his work van on a bush track the day after William Tyrrell vanished was discredited.
I didn't say it was Bill's van. I said it was the same colour as Bill's van.
And right now, as you sit here now, you can't say that was Bill's van?
No.
And so, within 2 consecutive sitting days, the case against the William Tyrrell investigation's highest profile person of interest has imploded. The pressure on the Speddings has been immense.
I know that I've been through is nothing compared to what William's families are going through now. I wish the coroner all wisdom in getting to the bottom of this mystery.
How big a relief was that for you?
It was a big relief, and it was again a peculiar sensation, because when Margaret and I got back home, I said to Margaret, we should be jumping for joy and skipping down the street, but we're just totally flat. There was nothing. There was no emotion. There was just complete flatness. And we're starting to get over it a bit now, but there was just nil.
What do you think
emotion.
that was?
Well, I think it's the adrenaline, for 5 years of adrenaline. After that, the adrenaline stops and you're just totally deflated.
Did police target the wrong man?
In any investigation, I think it's fair to say, and this might be over-dramatising to a degree, that we target everyone. You look at everyone until they're eliminated.
But in this case, did police target the wrong man?
I am not going to comment on that, in that there was lines of inquiry that required to be followed up, and what we needed to do was follow up those inquiries and then refer the matter to the coroner.
We might just have a beer while seeing it's the first time since all that kerfuffle's finished now.
Yes, that'll be lovely.
Bill Spedding is now suing the New South Wales Police over how he was investigated and is alleging malicious prosecution of the historical child abuse charges.
I would like to hear the police apologise to him what they put him through, but I don't know whether you'll get that. Because they just told him that they're going to ruin him, and they did.
What has this all done to your life and your business, Bill?
Well, it's all shattered. Basically, the business no longer exists. We have no, up until this point, we've had no life at all. And we've basically got to restart over again. But the thing is that the publicity was worldwide. It wasn't just New South Wales. It was Australia and worldwide. And that is damage that can never be repaired.
And how does that affect you?
Well, it just... actually describing the feeling is very difficult, but it's shattered. You know, we just don't know when someone's going to pop out of the woodwork and grab me around the throat again and say, "You're Bill Spedding. What did you do with William?"
The inquest into William Tyrrell's disappearance resumes next March. The coroner has said while the police investigation continues, she will not examine how it has been conducted.
The way in which they investigated Bill Spedding was fraught. It was fraught and it was problematic. And we need to know, and the public is entitled to know, and those who love William Tyrrell are entitled to know what went wrong with this investigation. Why haven't they found what happened to William Tyrrell?